we just keep looking at, there's so many injuries,
Yeah.
all of his organs, in internal, external, all of his organs shutting down. The first emergency room doctor showed me the urine bag, and the urine bag had a lot of sediment in it. And he said, if you see this, it's like his kidneys are breaking down. They're
What?
like failing, yes. But he was bruised. The bruises are mentioned in the search warrants. Um, and there were bruises that I didn't see because they had him hooked up to 3 forms of life support. So I didn't want to get over there and, you know, accidentally move
Hmm.
something. So I stayed on his right side, and all the equipment was on the left side. So there was a lot of places that I didn't even see the bruising. And when he died, Brandon had a lot of tattoos. And my thought was like, I don't get to ask him about these tattoos or hear the stories about him. So I was like, and I told the nurses, I said, I want to take pictures of his tattoos. And later we were able to take what I was taking photos of his tattoos, but go back and see his injuries
Hmm.
in a lot of those photos. But my daughter had the forethought that she took photos of my brother in this state. I guess, um, the younger generations, they kind of document everything that
Oh yeah.
way, so I'm glad that she did that, which might seem strange to some people that, to take a picture of your loved one in that condition. But I'm so glad that she did,
Right.
because if without, if it had turned into a cold case, we may have never even saw the photos of him, or to be able to put it out there that this case needs attention, without even having those initial photos.
Right. Right. Now, when they were on the scene, so 'cause since he didn't pass away at his apartment, because I'm thinking like, okay, they came in with, a photographer and friend, like, all this stuff, but they wouldn't have done that at that point, because some crime scenes, bodies lay there for hours as they're
Mhm.
collecting evidence and all that stuff. But the fact that he was still
Yeah.
alive, they had to kind of like move quickly and get him to the hospital. So there was no photos of him in the situation or the state that he was at his apartment, correct?
Right. There's no photos, but it is documented in the police report of where he was, what position he was in. It's also then that was also relayed on the investigative report, like the first autopsy. So what they did was they took him down to the morgue, and they did kind of a pre-autopsy. I'm not really sure of exactly what you call it, but it's like they did a report. They marked different things about his injuries, his body, but it
Mhm.
wasn't very thorough. And then they took his body to the state medical examiner. But one thing about when the police went in, which really bothered me, was that I kept hearing them say that Brandon was barricaded in his apartment. And I said, what do you mean he was barricaded? And then I was told, oh, that's just kind of a language that they use. But then my daughter-in-law told me that they called my son and her, and also said that he was heavily barricaded in his apartment. And I was like, what are they talking about? But no, nobody would answer my question about why they kept saying he was barricaded. So then I get the crime scene photos, and you can see, because when they do crime scene photos, the first thing they do is they go in and they take photos before anything is touched or anything is moved for investigation. So these initial photos, you can see him turning the key and going in, and there's nothing blocking the path. You can see all the way in. It was ransacked and it was a mess, but there was no barricade of any sort. The deadbolt was locked. That's it. And
So
then you see the back door. There's He had like kind of a cart on wheels. There's a cart on wheels with some boxes on it, but it wasn't really, it's like, you could go around the cart, and there was a clear path. There was like 2 feet clear for the doors. There
right.
was no barricade. And then as far as where his body laid, they did have to, I believe they had to take the door off to get to him. So they removed the door and put that in the bathroom so they could tend to Brandon. But I'm like, if someone falls unconscious and they're laying there in a coma, they didn't barricade the
Right.
door with their body. They literally, they're in a coma. That's not an
Right.
intentional barricade.
Right.
And they kept saying this, and I just think, like, why were they saying this? It was part of this narrative to make it like that he had some kind of mental breakdown and
Hmm.
was in there barricading himself and beating himself and doing drugs and all the other crazy things that they came up with.